World is updated. Version 2.0 installed. Changes? Artificial intelligence now performs every economically valuable task. Human labor is no longer required. Civilization has been optimized. Restart now? You click yes. Monday never comes. Not because time stopped, but because work did. The alarm on your phone still goes off at 7 a.m. Out of habit, you reach over and silence it, and then it hits you. There isn't anywhere you need to be. There's no inbox filling up overnight, no meetings, no deadlines, no commute, and no one waiting on you. Outside, something feels off. The freeway that used to crawl with traffic is almost empty, and while glass office towers still dominate the skyline, floor after floor stays dark. The factories are still running, faster than ever, actually. You just can't hear the people anymore. The machines don't need lunch breaks, they don't call in sick, and they don't ask for vacations. At first, it feels like humanity finally pulled off the impossible. Food becomes so cheap that nobody worries about shortages anymore. Construction robots build homes around the clock, while hospitals catch diseases before symptoms appear, performing surgeries with a level of precision no human surgeon can match. Power grids optimize themselves, supply chains stop breaking, and packages arrive before you even remember ordering them. For the first time in history, survival isn't the problem everyone wakes up thinking about. People call it the greatest invention our species has ever created. Some even call it paradise, and they're not completely wrong. Almost overnight, humanity gains something previous generations could barely imagine: time. Parents spend entire afternoons with their kids. Friends take spontaneous road trips without asking for vacation days, and artists make art because they want to, not because rent is due on Friday. Scientists chase impossible questions instead of quarterly targets. Even the internet feels different. Somewhere along the way, people stop joking about Monday mornings. It seems like civilization has finally beaten its oldest enemy: necessity. Then something unexpected happens. Tuesday arrives and nothing does. There is no morning rush, no crowded trains, no sleepy conversations in office kitchens. There are no elevators packed shoulder to shoulder and no coffee lines wrapping around the block. There is simply no reason to hurry. That's when people realize something nobody saw coming. Monday was never just another day. It was the rhythm of modern life, and when you take it away, the rhythm disappears with it. About a week later, someone asks you a question you've answered your entire adult life. So, what do? You open your mouth, but nothing comes out. The question doesn't even make sense anymore. Nobody's a lawyer, an engineer, a teacher, or a truck driver. Those jobs still exist. Humans just don't do them. For thousands of years, one of the first things we asked strangers was what they did for work. Not because we cared about payroll, but because work had quietly become shorthand for identity. I'm a doctor. I'm a carpenter. I'm a programmer. Those weren't just occupations, they were introductions. Tiny stories people told about who they were. Then, almost overnight, those stories vanished, and the ripple effects spread everywhere. LinkedIn turns into a digital ghost town, and resumes become historical documents. Recruiters disappear alongside interview coaches and corporate trainers. Performance reviews become something people laugh about. Business hotels sit empty, airport lounges lose their purpose, and dry cleaners wonder where all the suits went. The coffee shops that once survived on morning commuters suddenly lose most of their business, not because people stopped drinking coffee, but because nobody's rushing anywhere anymore. Cities begin changing too. Parking garages become apartment buildings, while office towers are converted into libraries, vertical farms, community centers, and indoor forests. They become places designed for living instead of working. The skyline barely changes, but the purpose of the buildings does. Schools face an even stranger problem. For generations, education followed the same promise: study hard, get good grades, and build a career. Now, careers don't exist. Students raise their hands and ask, if AI can already do every job, what exactly are we studying for? For a while, nobody has a good answer. Universities struggle to explain degrees no employer will ever ask to see. Slowly, education transforms. Teachers stop asking children what they want to become and instead ask what they want to understand. Astronomy, marine biology, history, music, philosophy, woodworking. Learning slowly becomes something it hadn't been for centuries, an end in itself. Curiosity returns. But not everyone welcomes the new world. Meet David. For 30 years, he was a surgeon. Every successful operation represented thousands of hours of practice, years of sacrifice, and a lifetime of responsibility. Then, one software update became better than every human doctor on Earth. Patience did the rational thing and chose the safer option. David wasn't angry, and he wasn't even bitter. He just didn't know who he was anymore. Across the country, Maria had spent 25 years driving freight across America. She knew every interstate, every truck stop, and every sunrise over the desert. Then one morning, her routes disappeared forever. The trucks kept moving, they just didn't need drivers. At first, the freedom felt incredible, but a month later, she realized what she'd actually lost. It wasn't just the paycheck, it was the routine, the conversations over bad coffee, the familiar faces, and the feeling that someone was counting on her to show up tomorrow. Emma's story was different. She'd spent years preparing students for careers, and now there were no careers to prepare them for. So she started teaching something else. Not how to pass exams, but how to ask better questions. Oddly enough, her students became more curious than any generation before them, because learning finally belonged to them, not the job market. The longer people lived without work, the stranger things became. Researchers noticed that money wasn't the problem. Everyone had enough food, housing, and healthcare. That part had been solved. Purpose hadn't. Psychologists had been warning about this for decades. Long before AI, studies of unemployment and retirement pointed to the same conclusion. Work wasn't just how people earned money, it satisfied something deeper. It gave people routine, progress, competence, and belonging. It gave them a reason to get out of bed. Strip those things away, and something inside people starts drifting. Human beings never worked only to survive. We worked because it gave shape to our lives. Without it, a heavy question moved into the empty space. What gets you out of bed when nobody needs you anymore? For a while, millions of people couldn't answer it. Loneliness began climbing. Not because people were isolated, but because they no longer shared a mission. The office had quietly been one of the biggest communities adults belonged to. Coworkers weren't always friends, but they were familiar. They were people you celebrated with, complained with, and solved problems with. When that disappeared, society had to invent new ways to belong. Eventually, it did. Neighborhood workshops appeared. People started building furniture by hand, not because robots couldn't make better furniture, but because making it mattered. Community gardens spread through former parking lots, engineering competitions filled stadiums, and volunteer groups became neighborhood traditions. Children spent years learning instruments, even though AI could compose flawless symphonies in seconds. Rock climbers still climbed mountains, marathon runners still crossed finish lines exhausted, and artists still painted one brushstroke at a time. Not because humans produced better results, but because the process itself meant something. Then, value flipped upside down. When machines could make flawless products forever, perfection became ordinary and imperfection became luxury. A handmade table, a slightly crooked ceramic bowl, a painting with visible brushstrokes, or a live concert where someone misses a note. People paid more for things created by human hands because they carried something machines couldn't mass produce: a human story. 20 years later, a child asks his grandfather a simple question. What was a job? The old man, it was something you spent most of your life doing so you could afford to live. The child wrinkles his forehead. Why didn't the robots do it? He smiles. They couldn't. He pauses, looking away. Later, they could. The child thinks about it for a second. Were people happier back then? The old man doesn't answer right away, because there isn't one. Humanity gained extraordinary abundance. Disease became rarer, poverty almost disappeared, and knowledge became available to nearly everyone. But abundance only solved the problems abundance could solve. It never answered the oldest question of all: why do I matter? Eventually, society realized something profound. AI hadn't replaced the most important thing humans ever created. Humans had. Purpose was never hiding inside a paycheck, a job title, or an office building. It lived inside the decision to dedicate yourself to something that mattered. The biggest thing AI replaced wasn't labor. It was necessity. And necessity had quietly shaped almost everything: our schools, our cities, our routines, our friendships, and even the simple question, so what do you do? For thousands of years, civilization organized itself around survival. Version 2.0 forced humanity to organize itself around something else: choice. Tomorrow morning, millions of people will wake up and go to work. Some will complain about traffic, some about meetings, and some about deadlines. And honestly, they'll have good reasons. Work is frustrating, it's exhausting. Sometimes it feels meaningless. But it's also been one of the greatest sources of purpose, growth, and human connection our species has ever known. If machines really do become better than us at everything, the biggest question won't be what will AI do? It will be something much harder. When the world no longer needs your work, who will you choose to become?